students, I'm Aanchal Sharma, your educator. In this video, we are going to discuss the overview of English Literature Syllabus Paper 2. So first of all, let me give you one announcement. We are starting with the new batch for English Literature, that is your Paper 2, and for Paper 1 from 10th July. So this is the date from which we are going to start our new batch related to Paper 1, that is your Teaching and Aptitude, and your Paper 2, Political Science and English Literature. So if you have any further doubts, in the description box, there will be links, you can check it out. Right. So before starting, I'll tell you that what is basically UGC NET. So we all know that UGC NET is an examination, it is an eligibility test, and this eligibility test is required for you to take any job in any university or at any college. So if you are pursuing lecturership, you need to qualify this exam of UGC NET, which is conducted by NTA. This is the agency that conducts the paper. So it is the National Testing Agency that conducts the examination twice a year. So you have two exams in it. You have Paper 1 and Paper 2. Paper 1 is for Teaching and Aptitude. We are starting the new batch, as I told you. We have been covering in the previous batch also, we covered all the units. This time from 10th July also, we are starting with the new batch. So we'll teach you all the 10 units in it. And in your Paper 2 as well, we will be dealing with all the 10 units that we have in English Literature. So this is basically the first unit that I'll be discussing. So in this video, what my agenda is to discuss all the units that I will be teaching in the course. So I'll be dealing with about 5 to 6 topics, the major topics that are there in the English Literature. We all know that the whole syllabus is divided into 10 units. You must have seen there is another video that I have made for the syllabus related to the syllabus. I'll pin it down. I will put the link there as well. You can look at the video and the things would be more clear. So we have the 10 units, and because the syllabus is very, it is not given in such a nice manner. So what is more important is to study chronologically, year-wise, right, and ages-wise. So I have divided the whole British literature into ages and not on the basis of prose or poetry, because it becomes difficult like that, right? So we'll be dealing first of all with the brief history of English literature. This comes under the British literature that we'll be doing. These are all the units, these are all the subdivisions that I have made for you, and I'll be dealing few of them. Few of them will be dealt with other faculty members. Right, so Old English, Middle English period, Renaissance, Neoclassical period, Romantic period, you have your Victorian age, or then Edwardian period, then Georgian, modern, and then comes the postmodern period. These are the broad divisions that I have created for you so that we can structure the class properly. Because in English literature, the most difficult thing that you will encounter is gathering, consolidating the material, and of course from where to study. So if you join my course, what you need to do is just attend the class. Everything would be provided to you. All the slides that I will make would will incorporate every detail that is needed, right? I'll give you homeworks as well, and at the end there will be PYQ and practice questions that we will be dealing. Right, so without wasting, let us discuss the units I will be dealing from British literature. So the first thing that we'll start is the Old English period or the Old English literature. So this is the period of Anglo-Saxon, and then comes the Norman age, the Norman conquest. So broadly, we'll be studying the texts related to Anglo-Saxon and the Norman. So we know that the Old English period or the Anglo-Saxon is the earliest form of English. The period is long, and we know it stretches from 600 to 1100 AD. So this is the broad time frame, and we'll be covering all the text and all the writers. We'll be studying about Beowulf, we'll be studying about Genesis, we'll be studying about the Wanderer, the Seafarer, These are the important texts, and you need to know the stories and the overview related to all of these texts, right? The Dream of the Root, all of these are the important texts that we will be dealing in the classroom, and I'll be providing the summaries as well. We'll be studying the two important figures, the Cenewulf and Caedmon. These are the important figures in the period, and we'll be dealing with them as well, right? So these are the things related to the Anglo-Saxon, and the Anglo-Norman age would also be discussed by me. Also, I will be starting my class with the history of English literature, where I'll be dealing with how literature came into being, how English came into being. So it was not from the very beginning that we were only focused on English literature. First of all, we see that there was the Celt migration. Then the Roman occupation came, then the Germanic settlements came, then we have the Viking invasion. After that, the Norman invasion was there, then the Renaissance started, and then we had the empire. Then we know that the English started to bloom. Before that, Latin and French were more important. We'll be dealing with the different periods like the Old English, the Middle English, the Early English, and the Late Modern English. We'll be studying how the English changed from the Cardamom's hymn to Beowulf. Then we have Chaucer, Canterbury Tales, how English was changing, and then we come to Shakespeare. That is the early modern English, and we'll be studying about the Great Vowel Shift. Very important questions are asked from this period. Also, we'll be studying in greater detail the different kinds and types of Bible, which is the first Bible. Why is the Wycliffe's Bible in English so important? In which year it started? How printing press bloomed, and when printing press first came into being. So all these are the things that we will be studying. We'll be studying how Celtic, then Latin, then Anglo-Saxon, then Old Norse, then Anglo-Norman, Old French, then French, Latin, Greek, Italian were the few languages that were important. Gradually, the Hindi came into being, then Persian, Arabic, Turkish, and the American English also was introduced. So we will be studying in greater detail the history of English language. Then what we'll be studying? We will then jump to the Elizabethan age. So of course, after covering Geoffrey Chaucer and other contemporaries in your Middle English period, we'll be starting with the early English period. We'll be dealing with the other writers related to it. So we know after the death of Geoffrey Chaucer, that was around 1400, thus the whole country or the whole era became a barren age. We had no good text. So it is also called as the barren age in literature. But then came the blooming period. We started writing more and more different texts. We have Thomas Watt, we have and the Earl of Surrey, who are mentioned together and who are extremely popular and important from the examination point of view as well. We'll be studying about Shakespeare, very important, all the sonnets that are written by Shakespeare, and who is he dedicating the given sonnets to. The things would be clear to you when we go to the detailed analysis of everything, right? So this is the Elizabethan poetry and prose period. We'll be studying about Michael Drayton, Sir Walter Raleigh, and Ben Jonson is also someone very important pertaining to this age. Not only that, we will also be focusing on university wits, how they are in direct relationship with one another. We'll be studying from which university they are associated, and you should know who all are the university wits and what all are the texts that are written by them, right? So we have John Lilly, Kidd, we have Paley, Lodge, we have Robert Greene, we have Christopher Marlowe and Thomas Nash, who are together called as university wits. Why are they referred as university wits? What are the different texts related to them? Are some important questions that we'll be dealing. Then we'll be studying about John Donne, a very important figure. We'll be studying all the poetry related to John Donne. Why is he so famous? Why is he using conceits? Why is he such an important writer in the history of English literature? Then Francis Bacon, also someone very important who wrote number of essays. Then come Elizabethan drama. So after studying what overall is drama, we'll be dealing with the English comedy, and the first English comedy, Ralph Roister Doister, written by Nicholas Udell. Then we'll be dealing with the other comedies that are there, like Niddle, that are written by Gertens. Then we'll be studying about the first tragedy, Gorboduc, important, right? And it was written in blank verse by Thomas Norton. Then we'll be studying about Christopher Marlowe, one person you cannot leave, right? Christopher Marlowe is very important. And then William Shakespeare. So we'll be dealing all the poetry part and all the other plays that are written by William Shakespeare. We'll be dealing with the sonnets, of course, and the plays that are written. Each play is important, which all other plays that are associated with the comedy, the tragedy, the tragic comedies should be clear. The dates should be clear. You should know all the characters. So each play would be discussed. I'll try to give the summaries, and also we'll read few lines because the lines are also asked from William Shakespeare in the match the following. So you should know, at least you should read Macbeth, Othello. So these are Tempest. These are the texts that you cannot leave before you appear for your examination, right? Then comes the Restoration period. One period that actually is my personal favorite. This is a period where you'll find the most interesting writers, and the comedy of manners is associated with the Restoration period. And you'll find a lot of questions related to this period. That is why you should focus a lot on Restoration drama. Questions are asked. NTA loves this unit as well. So we have none other than John Dryden, who will be studying in greater detail. This is the period, this restoration of Charles II in 1660 brought the revolution in English literature, and the collapse of Puritanism was seen. And now you will see that how the restoration of the king will bring back the theatres which were closed in the Elizabethan period, right? So we will be studying about John Dryden. We'll be studying all the detailed, all the text in greater detail, because all of them are very, very important. Astra Redex, Annus Mirabilis, we have Absalom and Achitophel, Macflecknoe, Religio Lici, the Hind and the Panther, Aurangzeb, the Rival Ladies, the Conquest of Granada, John Sebastian, All for Love, and the very important essay, the essay on dramatic poesy. All of these would be completed in the class only, and I'm pretty sure the detailed questions would also be discussed in the class. Then we'll study about John Bunyan, another very important figure who's associated with allegorical texts, and he is the one who wrote Pilgrim's Progress and the Holy War. Then comes the comedy of manner, one unit that is so important because definitely questions would be asked. If I have a lot of time with you, I'll definitely read the Provincial Scene, very important, from William Congreve's text, The Way of the World, written in 1700. This is my personal favorite. Also, it is in the Delhi University syllabus. And if you should know the strategy as well. All the texts that are associated with any central university syllabus, you cannot leave them. You should read all the texts like the Man of Mode and the Country Wife, also The Way of the World, are these texts that are associated with comedy of manners. They are critiquing the society. They are satirical in nature. That is why it is called as comedy of manners. How are these people only talking about these manners that are so futile and are not taking them anywhere? So in a slapstick comedy manner, they are writing the plays here. Important writers are John Etheridge, we have William Congreve, we have William Wycherley, and Sir John Vanbrugh. So you have to be patient with me, and we will be dealing with all of these writers. Then comes the later 19th century, the Victorian poets. Very important. Victorian period was now the time when railway came into being, when the whole England, the whole perspective of England was changing. Now modernization started. Now people were changing. We'll be studying the poetry related to it. How can we forget Lord Tennyson? Very important, who has written The Lady of Shalott. Also associated with Delhi University syllabus, one poetry that is very close to my heart. You must read The Lady of Shalott. You must read it from the feminist perspective and you will love the text. We'll be doing that in the class as well. Also, there are other important works like Morte the Arthur, In Memoriam, then More and the Other Poems, and other associated texts are also there that we will be dealing. Then comes Robert Browning, one very important poet who has written The Ring and the Book, an epic length poem from which in-depth questions are asked. Also, he is very famous for two reasons. One, he is someone who married a very important poet, and secondly, he is very famous for his dramatic monologues. So, we'll be studying the different poetry associated with him like Fra Lippo-Lippi, like The Last Duchess. All of them are associated with Delhi University syllabus. That is why it becomes so important, and you see questions are asked from Robert Browning. Characters, which character, kaun si poetry ke saath kaun sa character is associated is one question that they always ask, right? So you should know all the poetry, the names and all the characters that are associated with it. He married Elizabethan, married Browning, very important writer as well. So my Last Duchess, Fra Lippo-Lippi are few poetry collections that are very important. Then comes Matthew Arnold, my favorite again because he has written a very beautiful poetry called as Dover Beach. Scholar Gypsy is also associated with him. So we'll be studying him in greater detail. Not only Matthew Arnold is important as a poet, but in criticism also, he is one writer that you cannot leave. So he becomes very important, and we'll be studying Matthew Arnold in greater detail. Then come your Dante Gabriel Rossetti. Then we'll be discussing the poetry related to the wife of Robert Browning, that is Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and the poetry collections that are written by her. And A.C. Swinburne has also written some canonical works and ballads. And how can you forget someone who translated Rubaiyat? So it is Edward Fitzgerald and Rudyard Kipling and Francis Thompson. Also a few poets that are associated from that period and are important. So chronology ke bahut questions aate hain. That is why poetry is very important. Then comes your novels that are associated with the Victorian age. You will be studying with me Jane Austen, all the texts and all the years that are associated because they do ask questions related to it. Charles Dickens, very, very important. All the texts are important. First lines, important lines associated to it, important characters associated with it are all very important. Pickwick Papers, whether it is, say any text that is associated with your Charles Dickens is important. They do ask questions, in-depth questions are also asked from this zone. Right, then we have Bronte sisters, we have Jane Eyre written by Charlotte Bronte. We'll be studying this text in greater detail. We'll be taking the feminist perspective also. We'll be studying the critics associated with this text. We'll study the concept of good angel. We'll be studying the concept of the mad woman in the attic. All of these are important concepts. Then we'll study Emily Bronte, and that is the text written by her. The novel written by her is Wuthering Heights, and Anne Bronte is also important. Then we have George Eliot, and very important again, we have Thomas Hardy. So my important tip to you, right now you can write also in, anywhere that they will ask questions from Thomas Hardy, and greater detailed questions would be asked, right? So every year they just take one or the other text associated to Victorian novelists and greater detailed questions are asked. Say for example, Test of the D'Urbervilles is their favorite text. They ask deeper questions from it. They even ask about the letter that was found under the carpet. I'm pretty sure you remember the summary of Test of the D'Urbervilles. Read all of these texts. Desperate Remedies, Under the Greenwood Tree, and all of them that are associated with Thomas Hardy are important. We'll be studying about Mary Shelley. Then we'll be studying about Edgar Allan Poe and Sir Walter Scott. Another very, very important person related to the Waverley novels, and you cannot forget Walter Scott. He has written historical novels. Then we'll be studying the other writers that were there in the 19th century literature also. Then comes the prose period, and they will ask questions. 1 or 2 questions are asked from the prose. They can ask questions like who is associated with essays to Elia, right? So you should know it is Charles Lamb who has written it. So texts associated with them are very important. We'll be dealing with prose writers like William Hazlitt, Thomas De Quincey, very important. They every time ask questions. The Confession of an English Opium Eater is associated with whom, right? So you should know it is associated with Thomas De Quincey. Then Thomas Cyril, important hai, and then we have Macaulay, Lord Macaulay. Charles Darwin also comes under this age. Then we have John Ruskin. Then we have Matthew Arnold, as I was telling you, all of his texts like Essay in Criticism, Culture and Anarchy, Literature and Dogma, all would be discussed. They ask questions, in-depth questions are asked. And here the time period is also important, the publishing period. Then we have John Ruskin, Samuel Butler, right? So these are the few writers. Then after doing the modern age, we then will start with the postmodern. So you'll study postmodern age with me. One very important age, contemporary period. So we'll be dealing with the starting of the postmodern age till the contemporary time. There are so many new novels coming up, and they can twist the questions, write the recent Nobel Award winner. They can ask you about Pulitzer Prize winners. So they do ask questions from the contemporary period and related to the postmodern age. Very important is the avant-garde theater. We have the death of the god. We have existentialism. We have you call it. There are so many different movements that were starting in this period. So all of them are important. We have the theater, the absurd theater. So all of these things are important, and we'll be doing them in the class. I'll be telling you all the plays associated with Samuel Butler, Harold Pinter, James Osborne, T.S. Eliot, Zeno Casey. We have Arnold Wesker. We have Bertolt Brecht. Right, so we have Somerset Maugham, Tom Stoppard. How can you leave Tom Stoppard, right? So we have Christopher Fry, and we'll be dealing with all of these writers that are associated with the 20th and the late 20th century in the English literature. We have other writers, other novelists like Agatha Christie. We have J.R. Tolkien. We have Bram Stoker. Take out any paper, any recent paper, you will find questions, 1 or 2 questions related to this section. Maybe in the match the following, or it can be, they can ask the text related to them. We have Somerset Maugham, Doris Lessing, and so on and so forth. So there are other periods that are coming, that are falling under this age. There are other movements falling under this age, and we'll be dealing with all of those periods or all of those different movements as well. The things would be more clear, right? Then some other novelists are like Muriel Spark, A.S. Bate. We have Bradbury. We have Angela Carter. We have, say, Joyce Carey. All of them are important from the examination point of view. Then comes the dramatists. So we have Christopher Fry. We have Harold Pinter, Samuel Beckett. Very important. Harold Pinter is also very important. We have Tom Stoppard, we have Arnold Wesker, and we'll be dealing all the plays that are written by them, and we'll be dealing with the settings also, because questions are asked from the setting and not easy questions that who has written it, right? So they are making the paper more and more comprehensive. Then comes the poets associated with it, and these 3 are very important. We'll be dealing all the texts related to Seamus Heaney, all the poetry, bog poetry that are written by him. We have Ted Hughes and Philip Larkin. After that comes the American literature. So just as the British literature, American literature is also associated with important people, important periods, and it is also divided in different ages. So I will first talk about the pre-colonial time, pre-colonialization, the literature that is associated with the indigenous people. Then we'll be dealing with the colonial and the early national period, where people were starting to express their own problems. They were the first colonies and they were coming up. The literature was very practical, straightforward, and often it was derived from the Great Britain as well. So they were focusing on the text. We have very important Anne Bradstreet, first woman who started to write in the American period. You know, she struggled a lot and started to write poetry. So we'll study about her. We have other writers also associated with it. Then gradually the whole American Renaissance started, and the whole, what is an American man? What is basically the work of American man started to bloom. All of these notions came into being when Benjamin Franklin's autobiography came into being. Also one text associated with your syllabus in Delhi University, so it becomes important. Then we have other writers like Washington Irving, and the texts written by him like The Legend of the Sleepy Hollow, like Rip Van Winkle, and other poetry collections and books written by him, or the novels. Then we have James Fenimore Cooper. He is very famous for his Leather Stocking Tales, and we'll be dealing with his texts in greater detail. We have other major novelists as well that we'll be dealing in the class. After that, we have we have a very important writer in the American history, that is the Henry James. So I'll give you 1 or 2 classes associated with Henry James only, because he has written few very important texts from which greater detailed questions are asked, like the Americana, the Portrait of the Lady. We have the Wings of the Dove, the Golden Bowl, all being very important. Then we have some other writers. If you wish, you can take screenshots. We'll be dealing with all of these writers related to the postmodern age in the American literature, right? Some of them are like John O'Hara, we have John Steinbeck, and we have Burroughs, and we have Jack Kerouac, very important. We have Truman Capote, we have Harper Lee, and we have John Ortberg. Right, so these are few other writers related to postmodern age. Then comes the post-colonial literature. Post-colonial literature would be segregated in other details, other small sections. We'll be starting with the African American literature first, where we will be dealing with Frederick Douglass, the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, the works that are talking about the hardships related to slavery, how they were once a colony of Britain. Then we'll be dealing with the other texts related to the post-slavery era. Very important is Booker T. Washington, W.B. Du Bois. Then we'll be talking about Langston Hughes. We'll be talking about the different novels written by Hudson. Also very important, Alice Walker. Few texts associated with Alice Walker, like The Color Purple. What do you mean by color purple? What is feminism? What is womanism? Who all are the writers associated with womanism? Intertextual study is needed to solve the paper. Then we have The Notes of a Native Son by James Baldwin. Then we have Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, very important. Lauren Hansberry, we have Richard Wright, Emery Baraka, all of them are important writers. We have important writers associated with the civil rights era like Martin Luther and Malcolm X. So the texts related to them, autobiography, letters related to them, all can be asked, right? Then we have the Black Arts Movement. So the Black Arts Movement, Harlem Renaissance, is a very important period related to American literature, and you cannot leave that period. If not asked in the paper, being a literature student, these are the canonical works. This is a very important time, Harlem Renaissance. You need to be very clear with the Jazz Age, right? You should know, you should read in greater detail about Emery Baraka. You should know about Alice Walker. You should know about Toni Morrison, and we have Maya Angelou. So you have these important writers, important women writers who are now talking about their own suffering. It is not only the males who were suffering because they were once a colony. They were suffering because they were doing hardships. Women were doubly marginalized. This is a very important era, and you need to know the text associated with Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou, Alice Walker. Then we have other writers. Then comes the diaspora literature. Diaspora literature is a wide range, and we'll be dealing with writers like we have Hanif Qureshi, we have Salman Rushdie, we have V.S. Naipaul, we have Sam Selvon. So these are few important writers. We'll be dealing how they have written some adaptations, how they're working on important texts. Like we know that Jane Ryers is again working on Jane Eyre, right? So you should know that these are the people who are writing out of the agony, writing out of the pain, writing the suffering that they are facing because now they are displaced from their own homelands. Then comes the Australian writers. The Australian literature is also important. In it, A.D. Hope, Patrick White are very important, though questions are also asked from Peter Carey. We'll be dealing with the texts related to them. Then comes the European literature. Under it, the other literature comes the classical Greek literature, where we'll be studying about all the Greek gods, all the myths related to them. We'll be studying it. We'll be studying about the Greek civilization, about the Greek theater, Homer, Aeschylus, we have Pindar. These are the important writers associated with this age. Sophocles, that we'll be dealing. Then comes the Italian literature. Now, Italian literature is one part. They do ask questions from it, but not difficult questions are asked because texts are important here. In-depth questions are not asked from these periods. Here you need to know the text, right? So you should know about Dante. You should know about Luigi Pirandello. Very important writer. They ask questions from the 6 characters in search of an author. A very important book, and I suggest you to read it. You will definitely fall in love with it. Then comes Italiano Calvino, and you have Umberto Eco. Then we have the French literature. So from French literature, we have writers like Montaigne, Voltaire, right? We have Gustave Flaubert, we have Emily, we have Albert Camus, and we have Marcel Proust. So these are very important writers. All the texts associated with them and the time period are important. Chronology questions are asked. And Gustave Flaubert is very important. Voltaire, you cannot leave these writers. Then you have other writers like Alexander Dumas, you have Charles Baudelaire, right? So these are some important writers, and here and there you will find questions related to them. If you solve any set paper, any paper of UGC NET, you will see that questions are asked from Kundra. Kundra is very important as well. We have other writers that are also very important. Then comes the Indian literature. Nowadays, from the last two cycles, I believe they are focusing a lot on Indian literature. So not only a very traditional approach is important here, a very good approach is needed, right? According to me, a very polished study is needed when it comes to English literature. If you just overview all the writers, all the poets, that is not sufficient. We'll go in greater detail. Yes, we will be studying all the novelists and all the poets that are associated, but we will study the contemporary literature also related to Indian literature. So we'll start with, of course, we have Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, we have Mulk Raj Anand, we have Narayan, we have Raja Rao, we have Kamla Markande, we have Khushwant Singh. So these are some important writers you cannot forget. But we'll also be dealing with the contemporary writers who are very important. So to understand, first of all, you need a good knowledge about all of these novelists, but contemporary period is what we will be focusing. Similarly comes the poets, and we have the other writers associated with it. So these are the novelists, these are the poets. Meena Alexander, Jayanta Mahapatra. So you can look at the series that we have been bringing forth for you, and we'll be dealing with all of these poets and writers, these novelists, aesthetics in a greater detail, right? So we'll be dealing that. Then comes language and pedagogy, a very scoring unit. 2 questions are asked from it, and those 2 questions are in your hand. The ball is in your court if you just study whatever I'm teaching in the class, because not difficult questions are asked. We'll be dealing with the basic English project. We'll be studying about the New Bold project. We'll study the basic terms related to linguistic and research. Research is also important. I haven't written it. That is also very important. We'll study about all the evolutions of different dictionary, contemporary dictionaries or the contemporary magazines. Very important. They ask questions from the popular journals and magazines. We'll study about the evolution of English language. How did it evolve? We'll study about the terms related to linguistic like phonology, semiotics, what is morphology, all the terms related to ELT, right? So we'll study that and it is very easy. In 3 classes, we can complete this unit. Then comes the literary criticism and literary theory. One part we have to pay the most focus on. These are the units, these 3 units, criticism, and we have then theory and then cultural studies. The topics I will be dealing, these are very, very important. We have, starting with the Greek critics, we'll study about Socrates, Plato and Aristotle. Then we'll deal with the Enlightenment critics. From the Enlightenment period, we'll study about John Dryden, Pope and Samuel Johnson. All the texts, we'll be dealing with the text, and the dates are also very important, as I am emphasizing again and again. Then comes the Romantic Age, in which we'll be dealing with William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge along with John Keats. All being very important. The terms associated with all of these people are coming again and again in Match the Following. You can pick up any, any recent paper and you'll definitely, find questions related to it. Then comes literary theory. So we'll be starting with the first formalist criticism and coming to the very contemporary literary period like eco-criticism. So we'll be dealing with those periods, right? In my class, I will be dealing with new criticism, all the important writers related to new criticism, all the works related to them, and the dates. So I'll make you learn those in the class only. Right now as well, I think we had questions from Kenneth Brooks. So they asked questions related to F.R. Lewis, Kenneth Brooks, I.A. Richards, William Ibsen. We have Blackmore, we have Wimsett, right? So Wimsett is also very important. They do ask questions from it, right? So we'll be dealing all the important terms related to these theorists. What are they talking about? What are they talking about? What are the different terms they are giving? Like we have Foucault, and Foucault talks about panopticon. So you always will find, the terms associated with a certain person who has written the text. So we'll be dealing with all of those things in the classroom. After this, we'll be dealing with formalism. In formalism, we'll be dealing with Victor Shavorsky. We have Roman Jacobson and the text related to them. Then comes the structuralism. In the structuralism, we'll be studying about Fernand de Saussure. We'll be studying about Claude Lévi-Strauss. Then we have so many. Mikhail Bakhtin, very important. We have Roland Barthes. So this time also they ask texts related to these 2 writers. So they are very important. Then comes the postmodern critics. Postmodern literary theory incorporates writers like Julia Kristeva, Jean Baudelaire. There are writers like Frederick Jameson, Lyotard, and we'll be dealing with the works. And as I told you, the different terms associated with them. Then comes the reader response theory, in which we'll be studying with writers like Stanley Fish, Aisha, and comes the queer theory, in which Sedgwick is very important. Then we have Alan Sinfield, we have Andrew Rich, that is very important. Last but not the least, we'll be dealing with eco-criticism. In eco-criticism, major criticism and major writers would be dealt. Last but not the least, we have the most important unit, I must say, is cultural studies. They will ask statement-wise questions from it. You should know what is popular culture, from where we have the origin of cultural studies, how cultural studies can be associated with different literary theories. All of these things should be clear. We'll study about the evolution, need, and the significance of cultural studies. What is popular culture? What are the different texts? What is subjectivity? What is identity? What is religion? All being very important. What is culture per se? We'll be reading the text as well. We'll be focusing on John Fiske, and we will study about Hogarth, we'll study about Stuart Hall, and there are Raymond Williams. How can I forget him? So we have culture materialism, the term associated with very own Raymond Williams. So we'll be studying about these things. Like we have Stuart Hall, and Stuart Hall has talked about few phenomena like popular culture, mass culture, circuit of culture, and encoding and decoding. Right? Sony Walker, one example that he uses. This question has also been asked, right? So we will study all of the texts that are associated with the important writers. Then we will study in greater detail what is the connection of culture studies with gender, technology, religion, economics, and social culture. So these are the few things that we'll be studying. We'll study how globalization, how you know that the global economic flow is there, how your whole world is changing. Now we are not only talking about diaspora, but we are talking about globalization, creolization, glocalization, then the fragmentation. All of these things are important. Important writers associated to cultural studies are very important, and the center of cultural studies is something they ask questions related to it. So we cannot leave Hogarth, we cannot leave Raymond Williams, right? So these are the few important things. This is how we will be completing the whole syllabus. The whole syllabus would be completed, and you know that the things would be, I am pretty sure that the things would be clear in the class only. I will be dealing with all these units that I have discussed. After this, there will be practice questions, and there will be what? There will be your PYQs as well in the class. So I'm sure that you will like my classes, and if you have any doubt, you can write it in the comment section. Just a quick reminder that we are starting with our new batch from 10th of July. So enroll soon, and then let us study together. So thank you so much.